Thank you, Mr Deputy President. It's an appreciated opportunity to make a contribution to this debate and this private senator's bill brought forward by the Greens Party. And I was listening to Senator Siewert speech, and often when this issue comes up, members of the Greens Party in this place show little respect for other people's views. They show little respect for the fact there might be different perspectives on what it means to be married and why we have had a definition of marriage as one between a man and a woman for thousands of years. But, of course, that is immaterial to the Greens because they have come here in the last 10 or 15 years and are all-knowing and omnipotent and omniscient and believe that it should be changed. And anyone who disagrees with that, including presumably our fathers, grandfathers, grandmothers, they have a different view, are all bigots, and we're right and they're wrong. That's their view. That's their view. No respect at all for other individuals' viewpoints. And I think if you are going to change an institution that's stood the test of time, if you are going to propose a changed definition to something that has been in place for centuries, not just here but in other cultures as well, you would take some time to familiarise yourself with the history of the institution and why it actually exists. And I see none of that, no evidence of that the Greens have done that. At times they seem to imply that this particular institution is a religious one or a Christian one, when in fact that is completely not true, and it's also not true in our own Western culture. As I said, this is an institution that actually, in different forms, is effectively replicated across almost the entire world, or has been until the turn of this century, as an act where two people, a man and a woman, come together in union to become married. In our own culture, in our Western European roots of this particular institution, don't go back to Jesus' time or Christian times or Judaic times or any monotheistic religious times. They actually go back to Roman times, because the word marriage, the very word marriage, is derived from a Latin term called matrimonium. And I think it's important to understand that definition because it helps you understand the history of this institution and why it's come about. Matrimonium in Latin is the combination of two definitions, matri, meaning mother, and monium, meaning state of being or condition. So for Roman people, the institution of marriage was the state of being a mother. That was why people got married or entered into matrimonium. Of course, in Roman times, there were plenty of other adult human relationships. Homosexuality was a commonly accepted relationship. But in Roman times, they stuck with the definition. They had an institution that was separately recognised the coming together of a man and a woman, in particular with the mother becoming the parent of a child. And that, to me, must be something core at the centre of this debate if we're going to change this institution. Obviously, there was felt a need to establish an institution like this to raise and to protect children. Obviously, it's been an incredibly successful institution, given its permanence and consistency over many different cultures, over many different forms of government and societies. Even in our own Western culture, we've evolved, of course, a lot from Roman times through the emergence of a nation-state, through the Dark Ages, through feudal times. This institution has stood through all those tests of times and has stayed constant, basically, from its initial inception. Of course, it is something that is important to many religions as well, but again, that just is an indication of its universality and something that we should be very careful before we change. So it disappoints me that the Greens can't actually see that there is a very considered and reasonable arguments for why we shouldn't change this definition. I certainly respect other people that have a different view. Some of my colleagues have a different view. Some of my Senate colleagues here on the other side have a different view. I can understand that view. I disagree with that view, but I do respect it. And the Labor Party, I give them credit, are showing some respect for it by saying they support a free vote. But they say they support a free vote, Mr Deputy President, but then in this place, whenever these debates come up, we never hear from Labor Party senators who might be able to express such freedom. I know there are senators over on that side that share a different view on this debate than the ones we've heard so far from the Labor Party's debate. But where are they? Where are they? They never seem to be allowed to get up here and speak. And I would say to the Labor Party, please, let the diversity of views reign. Let hundreds of flowers bloom. Let Senator Bullock have his say. Unleash Joe. Let Joe have his freedom. Let Senator Bullock have his say here, because I'd be very happy to listen to his view on this debate. I think he'd have a lot to contribute, but the Labor Party want to lock people like Senator Bullock down and not give him the opportunity to contribute to this debate, because they don't, I think, really believe in a free vote. It is a political position at the moment, and even they admit that post, I think, not the next election after, they'll adopt a binding vote, and it will no longer be free. So it's quite a strange position for them at the moment. Now, this particular bill seeks to recognise same-sex marriages that have been solemnised in foreign countries and recognise them for the purposes of Australian law. Of course, to that effect, it is effectively a backdoor to change the definition of marriage in our Act today. It's fairly easy today to travel overseas. It's fairly low cost, and many Australians do that. So by recognising a same-sex marriage in another country, of course, that effectively means that we would have changed our own definition, our own Act, and allow anybody who wants to be married inconsistent with the current definition of our Marriage Act to quite easily do so at just simply the cost of a plane ticket to somewhere else. I don't think that's how we should change the definition of our Marriage Act. We don't need to do it in such a loophole kind of way. We can very easily simply change the definition of the Marriage Act itself if that's what we want to do and achieve. And indeed, as my colleagues would all know, there's been a multitude of bills put forward to this place and the other place to do that very thing. And that should be the way we try and approach that. Of course, every bill that has been put up to change the definition of marriage over the past, I think, around 10 years or so, has not succeeded and has not won the support of either chamber. Now, this debate has become more prominent in our public sphere, and views have become more impassioned about it, and I think in all political parties. And the government has taken a decision that the best way to solve this would be to ask the Australian people what their views are and make sure we do make a decision consistent with their considered views. I think if we are going to change an institution that stood for thousands of years, there is no harm in taking a couple more years to make sure that whatever debate and whatever decision we make is a well-informed one and one that we know and trust is consistent with the Australian people's views. This debate, I make the point that this debate heated up last year because the Irish people had that very opportunity to have their say. They had a referendum. The vote came back in favour of changing their definition of marriage, and it was subsequently changed. And the supporters of change to our Marriage Act welcomed that at that time, called it a landmark event, thought it was a wonderful outcome for their particular cause. So I asked them, what have they got to fear? What have they got to fear from exactly the same process being replicated here in Australia? They so welcomed that particular event. They were so proud of what the Irish people had done. What is the problem of giving the Australian people exactly the same right? And I say to you, Mr Deputy President, that the reason they are so scared at the moment of taking it to the Australian people, the reason they are fighting so hard to stop any plebiscite to the Australian people, is that they are concerned that they may not get the same decision as Ireland. They may not get the same decision as Ireland. For my part, I have got nothing to fear. For my part, I'm happy to ask the Australian people what their views are. I recognise that right now, in polls that are done, the majority is there. But I do think, as I said, that we should make this decision after a considered debate, not after a phone poll, not after someone's called up after they've had their dinner and asked for a considered view on an institution that's lasted for thousands of years. We should have the respect to take a proper debate on this, a lengthy debate on this, before we go changing something as important as this. And I also would say, and take this opportunity to say to the chamber, as I've said publicly, that for my part, if a vote comes back in favour of changing the Marriage Act, in particular if a vote comes back from Queensland, where I am a senator for, comes back in favour of changing the Marriage Act, I will respect the views of my Queensland electors, because that's who I'm here to represent. However, I would add to that I won't support any changes to the Marriage Act which compromise or minimise people's human rights. That is not something that we should outsource to the ballot box. We do not have a situation where we allow some kind of tyranny of the majority to undermine people's fundamental human rights. And one of those fundamental human rights that is extremely important to our country and our way of life is freedom of religion. People should have the freedom to carry out their own religious beliefs, the freedom to carry out their own beliefs. It's a right that's enshrined in our whole system of government. It is implied in our constitution, and it's of course something we have signed up to, committed to sign up to in various international human rights agreements. And for that reason, we should not do anything which undermines those rights. And I'm concerned that some of the particular proposals at the moment to change the Marriage Act, the detailed specific ones, may in fact do that, particularly where they force celebrants, private celebrants, to solemnise same-sex marriage relationships, even in an event where they may have religious views that differ, or beliefs, not just religious views, or beliefs that don't support such a solemnisation of marriage. I don't think anybody should be forced to do that, but the current bills before this place and the other place would do that. And I'd also like to make the point that while I'm happy to be guided and will act in accordance with the views of the electorate, I think it's also important that we hear from those who want to change the Marriage Act what they would do in the event of a vote which supports traditional marriage, because many of them have been out in the past couple of weeks, such as the Leader of the Greens, Senator Di Natale, saying that it's reprehensible that some individuals may not vote in accordance with the people's wishes. Well, what would they do if the people's wishes come back in support of traditional marriage? That question must be asked. They must be asked, what would you do if it comes back and saying the Australian people wants to support traditional marriage? Will the Greens political party accept that particular decision? Will they end their attempts, their continual and interminable attempts to change this Act? Will they do that? I doubt it very much. I doubt it very much. But I'd be interested to hear their response on that question. And finally, I want to return back to what I started with. And while this is somewhat of a semantic debate, I think words are important. I think definitions are important. I believe that if we do change the definition of a word, it does change our culture. I believe in what Ludwig Wittgenstein said, that if I don't have a word to describe something, I can't conceive of it. And the limit of my world is the limit of my language. And if we do change this particular definition, it will remove some of the colour and imagination from our life, because we'll no longer have a word that just describes the union between a man and a woman often coming together to make children. I think that's an incredibly miraculous and important event in many of our livelihoods and in our culture, and we should have a particular institution and a particular word to describe the creation of the next generation.